Hello, everybody. My name is Erica Kraus. I lead brand and community at 8Fig. I want to welcome you to the very first webinar in our series called Scale Smarter, Faster in 2022. We want this year to be one where you guys rise above the noise and with smarter tools, insights, partners, better resources than ever to go as far as you want to go and really hit your next stage of growth. We're going to be giving you access to incredible experts for every stage of your supply chain. So as the series continues, we're going to look at things like product innovation and sourcing. We'll talk about freight and logistics. I know that's a biggie for everyone. And then we're going to talk about marketing too. What are those tactics that you can use to ensure success? So this is happening every other Tuesday across the next several weeks. And we really hope you join us for all. We'll be dropping a link if you want to go ahead and register for all of the series at once. There's a link in chat for you. Again, we're super excited to have you guys here today. Now, I know some of you probably don't even know who 8Fig is. You saw our amazing panelists and you were like, yep, I'm joining, but you're like, who's 8Fig? So if you don't know who 8Fig is 8Fig is a growth funding platform built by supply chain experts to help you build a clear path to your next stage of growth. And then infuse that growth plan with continuous uncapped capital that drops exactly when you need it. And our goal is to make sure that you always have the healthiest cash flow to reach that goal, and that cash flow is adaptable because we know that you live in a dynamic world. And so having a dynamic growth plan is critical to your growth there. We'll be sharing a little bit more about that in this webinar today. But this specific webinar is all about how do you plan big? We're at the beginning of a new year and you have an opportunity to go big and plan aggressively. And we want to help you take advantage of that opportunity. We have some incredible panelists, which I will finally introduce in just a second. Before I do, for those of you who have just joined, please stick around at the end. We will be doing a Q&A. If any questions come up, feel free to drop them in the Q&A section. Try to stay away from the chat for the questions, just because we don't want to miss any that you guys might be throwing our way. And yeah, we do have some giveaways available, which are really cool. So grateful to all our panelists for giving some really cool stuff away. So you can join that as well in the chat. There's a link there for you. Okay, without further ado, I need to introduce you to our amazing panel of experts. Tyler, I'm going to pass to you first. Tyler is a seller accountant. If you don't mind telling us exactly who you are, what you do every day, and then something you're excited about in 2022, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yep. Or you're on.
So it's by the way, how many times have you spoken on a webinar and the internet in your house goes out like 3 minutes before we start? So no. I'm on the cell phone here, pivoting. This is a pivoting. So man, I am so excited about.
We've all been there.
I own an accounting firm. We do bookkeeping and fractional CFO for a whole bunch of e-commerce brands. And I just think these topics that we're going to be talking about today are so fascinating because we are capped by our mindset. We do need to plan so that we can be more confident. And if we're willing to do those two things, there's a lot of great growth that we can have here. And so I think it's going to be a great webinar. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Brandon, I'm going to kick it off to you. Tell us about yourself, something you're excited about in 2022.
Yeah, so I'm Brandon Young. My wife and I are sellers. We have 4 or 5 active brands. We'll do about 25 million ourselves. We also coach and teach. We have a mastermind. We have a software called Data Dive that aggregates a bunch of data about product research and optimization. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Liran, I'm passing to you.
Well, we already learned lesson number 1 from Tyler about pivoting. So, you know, you're already getting
we're already well on our way.
Getting value on this.
Way to adapt.
Liran Hirschkorn, I've been in the Amazon space since 2014. Today, I am the CEO and founder of Incrementum Digital. We're a growth agency for helping brands scale on Amazon. I'm also an advisor to 8Fig, so I work very, very closely with the 8-fig team in helping sellers get that growth capital and planning that they need. For 2022, kind of excited to see how sellers grow this year. 2021 was a challenging and tough year because a lot of sellers had, a COVID spike in 2020. And, I expect even, some months even this year may be down compared to 2021 when you had that, cash infusion from the government for people. But I'm excited to see the growth this year compared to 2021 and hopefully some of the supply chain issues get solved and to see, how sellers can grow, and a lot of which will be, growing from 6 to 7 figures or 7 to 8 figures.
Awesome. And last but definitely not least, Donna, I would love you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Erica. And thanks everyone for attending. So I lead 8fig's product team. Very, very proud to be really revolutionizing how sellers scale and all of the ways that we can bring benefit so that they can do so faster and while retaining their equity and still managing to achieve all of their goals. So for 2022, really nothing to add on Liran's amazing answer.
I love it. So guys, this conversation today is all about planning aggressively and scaling confidently. And I believe, and I know from speaking to each of you recently, that you also believe that all starts with mindset. Why do you think developing the right mindset is so critical to being able to scale?
You just want people to jump in?
Yeah. Sorry. Jump in. Whoever, you can pass the baton. This is an open question.
Yeah, no worries. So for us, we see a lot of people who are successful and a lot of people who aren't successful in this business. And we see a lot of negativity. And there's a few patterns that you start to notice about the people that are successful and the people that aren't successful. One of the biggest things you see is that you have a tenacity and an unwillingness to give up for the people that are going to be successful. So you'll see that when they have a product that doesn't go as planned, or if something doesn't go right, they learn from it, they adapt, they pivot, as Tyler said, but they will take the learning and then they will implement that into their next product or into their next venture. And it also takes a lot of consistency and a lot of planning and a willingness to look at data and always be learning. Another type of person that I see that isn't successful on a regular basis is the person who is already successful, maybe somewhere else or semi-successful somewhere else, and they see this as an opportunity, a side gig, and they just want to hire someone to do it for them. And they're not willing to put in the time and the effort to learn it themselves and to stick with it. And they're constantly distracted by other things. So I would say that if you have tenacity, if you're willing to learn from your successes and your failures, and you are the one that is driving this business and all in on it, you'll be successful.
Brandon, I have a question for you. Maybe before we skip over to Tyler, in your post for this webinar, one of the things you said is that you and your wife put in, like $100,000 last year into like growth and learning and coaching. So you yourself run a coaching group, but then you yourself also coached, right? So yeah. One, it just kind of shows you, right, that even if you are coaching, everyone's trying to get to the next level and being coached. But two, what are some of those insights that helped you? I mean, I imagine at some point you had to change your mindset to go from $1 million seller to a $25 million seller. Like, what was that unlocking you had to personally do to break 7 figures?
Yeah, there's always more to learn, and then you have to adapt your habits, your behaviors, and you have to get better as a leader, as a manager. So there's different positions that you can, like, different, there's always something bigger, always something greater you can do. And you don't have to take that next step if it's something that makes you extremely uncomfortable and not happy, right? I always tell people, if you can get to $1 million to $3 million revenue business and get a 7-figure exit from an aggregator, and it's really just you and a VA driving that's great. And as long as, if you don't want to go to that next level, like my wife and I have a desire to drive this, our toy brand to 100 million. So it's our desire to do that, but we've had to hire a CEO coach to learn how to get better at being executives, because now we're not working in the business, we're working on it. And we have to know how to hire A players. We have to know our organizational chart inside and out. We have to understand which seat has which KPI, and how to drive other people to do those tasks efficiently. And so that's what we spent a lot of money to people that are much better than us with a lot more experience to learn through a CEO coaching program. And it's been really good for us. But yes, when you first start, there's different levels. You don't skip to that, right? Like you have to first learn the fundamentals of Amazon product research and data analysis, and you can take your time to get there, but there's always
also that willingness to lay out that vision, right? And to carve out that path, and not just sort of give into this mindset of, I'm just going to wing it. Things have worked so far. Not relying only on luck, but making your own luck, as it were.
I'd be interested. Comment in the chat here or on the live stream if you've set 2022 goals. We're in January. You still have time,
right? But
who's written down your 2022 goals? Love to hear and to hear from Tyler as well.
No, I love what you guys are saying. I also spend a lot of money on self-development. And I think that I've never met a successful CEO who isn't laser focused on just the reality that the bottleneck of every business is the top, right? So Liran, if you and I can get better, Brandon, if you and I can get better, Donna, right? If we can get better, then we can raise the ceiling of our organization. And so I think you just got to be humble enough to say, I don't have, what got me here isn't going to get me wherever I want to go. I agree with you, Brandon. Like
awesome.
if your objective for this investment is a $3 million company with a $5 million exit, great, build that. There's not a wrong answer. But I think there is a wrong answer. The wrong answer is staying put and refusing to get better. And so I also am a big believer in, if I can't answer the question, what is it that I want, right? I mean, like I also lead a mastermind. It's funny, all three of us lead masterminds and coach other guys. Like the hardest question for entrepreneurs to answer is what do you want, dude? Like, what is it that you actually want to accomplish with this thing? Like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? Like, what would success look like? And it's not easier when you're a millionaire than when you're just starting out or you're 20. And so just my encouragement to you guys, if you take nothing else away from this webinar, is take a second to know what you want so that you can orient. And Brandon said this really, really well, orient your habits and your processes around getting that which you want.
I think that's
isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing how quickly one can achieve those things? I think that's also a mindset shift that has to happen sometimes with sellers who are thinking, the mountain that I have to climb or that I've set out to climb is so high. And, reaching that top is going to take so long and so many resources. But we see this all the time. We see scaling from 6 figures to 7 figures in less than a year, from 7 figures to 8 figures in a little over a year. So these things are not as unreachable as the stories that we tell ourselves sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, part of what, go ahead, Liran, sorry,
but you'll never see on social media the struggles, right? Like you're going to see everybody's success story, but you're not going to see when that person is, this close to losing their business, but then they decide to launch one more product that actually works and has success. And we also have to keep in mind that most people who, you can have the success on the first time, but most people don't. And something inside pushes them to have failure and still move forward. And I imagine that's what Brandon sees a lot in his successful students, right? They don't give up.
Yeah, that tenacity to not give up. I think the other thing you guys mentioned in here that I think so critical is naming the vision, naming the goal, putting it on paper, getting it out of your head, actually like holding on to it. I know that that's not always easy to define that, but it's a lot of sellers get into stuff like this, like Brandon mentioned. It's like a side thing, like, let's see what happens. I'm going to jump in and dabble a little bit, but then really quickly, you've got to name your intentions or you will miss those opportunities to grow. And I think the other thing we also know is you've got to work backwards, right? Once you name that plan, you need to work backwards from that plan. So one question that I want to ask is, how do you, once you've got that vision in mind, work backwards from that goal to make sure that what you're doing is actually helping you get there?
So this was literally the majority of the coaching that we did, besides the management. Our CEO coach asked us very early on, like, what is your objective? And for 12 months from now, 4 quarters, right? Because we're working 4 quarters ahead. So when Liran asked who set their goals for 2022, we did that 3 quarters ago. Like, we're already,
Awesome.
and as we move along, we're already 4 quarters out. You have to be, right? And the way you guys teach cash flow and cash flow management, you have to be thinking 3 and 4 orders down the road also. So for us, we set like a goal. I think we had set maybe 15 million, and he looked at us and said, why are you hiring me? What's the point? And he's like, and it was like an awakening, because my wife, she's Chinese, and like, it's just in culture, she's very conservative in a lot of ways. And I'm more of a visionary, let's go get it type of guy. So we complement each other really well. And I'm like, yeah, what's the point? But so we put a much bigger goal out there. And then he taught us and really taught us again about working backwards, how to make that goal real numbers through leading activities. So there's 2 elements to working backwards from a big goal. One is, what are the specific and measurable activities that you're doing on a regular basis that are moving you towards that? So what is the lever that you're pulling? And what are the resources you need to do it, whether it's human capital or actual dollars, like real capital, right? And so once you understand, and we call those enablers. So once you actually have the lever that you're pulling, the real activities, the daily activities that you're going to do a certain number of times every day that are going to move that needle in the right direction, and hopefully at the pace that you're projecting, you need to understand what is it going to take to actually do that activity. And so that's where you guys come in, which is so phenomenal, because you attended our workshop that we had here in Fort Lauderdale, and you can see the way that, capital with what you guys do is not as big of an issue as it might be with others, because you are partner with the person, create a real cash flow plan, and make it so easy for the seller to achieve those goals, because you're basically only getting paid once that product gets into Amazon and starts selling, and they start getting money back from it, versus a traditional loan, which is the second you take it, they're expecting their money back, and they're constantly knocking on your door. Right. So I love the fact that you can plan further out, that you understand cash flow, and that you're doing the leading activities to lead to those objectives.
When I know, Donna, the biggest thing that we talk about all the time is like, people have to get out of their head and put that plan somewhere. And that's the gift. I know we try to give to the world through like our tool.
So it's getting out of your own head, but it's also thinking about your business in a new way, renewed, sort of putting on your, what if money was not an object glasses, right? And this is tricky for some people, because it's always been an object. It's always been the number one object that you have to consider in every decision that you make. So now that money is not an object, what does your plan look like? How much can you grow? What are you considering now that you didn't consider before? And I think I love what Brandon was saying about looking at, are you setting big enough goals and all of that? And I think with great power comes great responsibility. So there's all these opportunities now that you can seize. But what about the opportunity cost? What about all of the choices that you are by definition not making by making the choices that you are making? So for example, if I'm choosing to expand internationally this year, am I by definition choosing not to expand to another platform, right? Making those choices, working backwards, looking at the numbers, looking at the ROI of any choice that I'm making here. And not just the ROI in terms of resources, right? Because we agreed money is a concept.
Right.
But looking also at the effort that it's going to take, the time that it's going to take, the odds of success. All of that needs to factor into, what does 2022 look like for me?
And one of the things that we want to add and talk about, and by the way, Brandon, last time somebody called me an enabler, it wasn't in a positive light. But One of the things we want to talk about is scaling aggressively, right? And question for you, Brandon, is how do you advise your students? Because you want to plan for success and plan like you couldn't fail, and if money wasn't an option. At the same time, somebody's launching their first product, they don't want to get 3,000 units because they're afraid of the what if this product doesn't take off and I'm stuck with this inventory. So do you just say like you need to plan aggressively and do enough work on the front end where you have to take that risk, or like is there a balance, and like how do you advise people in terms of like how to properly launch and scale a product?
Yeah, we don't think there's a point. Again, it's like kind of what our CEO coach told us. It's like, what's the point, right? If you're going to only order enough inventory to quickly run out of stock and then have mediocre success or no success and then struggle when you come back into stock, there's no point. We learned a valuable lesson probably at the beginning of last year. We realized that previously we were way too conservative. We would still order enough inventory to where we thought we had enough, but we were trying to cut it too close. And it was with a lot of the slowdown in logistics that we realized like we need to be a lot more aggressive. And we need to trust our process, trust the product research we do, trust the keyword research we do, and know that our batting average is over 80% for being profitable. And so maybe half of the products we order, we will continue to order, but being right more than 80% of the time because of the way we look at data and make decisions on a product, that means that we are losing a lot more money when we're right and run out of stock than when we are wrong and lose, right? So that was a big, when we just crunched the numbers, we realized millions of dollars had been lost by not ordering enough inventory and being aggressive.
I wonder in the chat how many people have launched a product and have gone out of stock.
Probably
especially
everybody.
this year, right?
Yeah, great question for the
I think
group.
actually what you're saying is so key to especially our philosophy, right? When we're building this product.
Look at the chat. Me, everybody.
I'm saying it takes a certain something to reach 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures. And that's not to be belittled. That should be a driving force behind your decisions. That should be empowering the sellers to know I've made it this far based on my knowledge, based on what I can do. That alone should serve as validation for taking certain risks on, right? For not necessarily being so conservative, especially in the landscape that we're seeing today, which is richer with competitors, more supply chain disruptions. So, one can look at that and think, okay, this is getting really chaotic. But on the other hand, look at the opportunity. Right. Look at how much demand has risen since 2020 with the pandemic, of course, but even before that, e-commerce wasn't shrinking by any means before the pandemic.
Now, Tyler, I know you are looking at another angle when you're looking at people's books. And I think that that's a really important thing to bring in here, because one of the things we laughed talking about recently is that you can lie to yourself. So there's some watch outs here, right? In planning aggressively, you have to be honest with yourself. And I think you have an incredible point of view because you're actually looking in the book and then showing it back to everybody and saying, is this what I'm seeing something different here? So how can you use the books to actually validate your plan and feel confident moving forward? And then what do you do to help people mitigate risk? How would you encourage them to mitigate risk as they take those risks? Because I think we're making all the points that are being made are huge. Like, you guys can do this. Like, this is a thing. It takes tenacity. It takes a growth mindset. It takes learning, but it also takes data and being honest. And I think you probably more than anyone get to hold up that mirror for people. So wanna hear a little bit.
I mean, well, I think the most important thing, Brandon, you said so many great things there, Liran, we all have here, by the way, but like, I think what has given Brandon the confidence he can say that he has an 80% success rate with products he launches. 9 out of 10 sellers that I talk to don't know the answer to that question, or more importantly, don't know the answer to the question, did I actually make money last month or last quarter or last year? And so I think Jim Collins calls it fire bullets before you fire cannonballs. And so the idea of having a calibrated strategy, I know I'm going to hit the ship. Now I can fire a cannonball and I can place bigger bets with confidence is a much better strategy. And in fact, where we say, hey, take bigger risks, be more aggressive, it's actually taking less risk, because what I've done is I've used empirical data to validate my process, right? So the two things I heard from Brandon. One is I've got an 80% success rate, and two, we trust our process. And so if I were coaching a seller, and I do as a CFO for 9 figures a year of sellers, I would say, let's understand the underlying fundamentals of your products. Is this a product that's going to get you 11% profit margin after ads? Probably don't need to borrow money to scale that product. That's a bad product. Okay, we don't know the answer to that question. Let's go take a look at your bookkeeping or your dashboards and get you the answer to that question so that we can have an intellectually honest discussion about your strategy and your products. Okay, your products have 30% margin after ads. Oh boy, this is looking good. Now let's take a look at what the keyword research tells us might be the demand of the market. And now let's raise the right capital to scale the business. But you kind of have to have the cart and the horse.
And you brought up a really important point, is like, is the profitability really there? Like, you can look at one graph and feel really encouraged, but is it truly profitable? And, we all see those graphs get posted constantly. But digging deeper.
Sorry about that.
Nope. Yeah, Liran's the classic graph poster, actually. But yeah, digging a little deeper, understanding your data is a huge part of validating your aggressive growth strategy.
And the thing is, as entrepreneurs, like, we go to shows, we go to conferences, all of us, all the time, and everyone wants to talk about sales growth. Like, that's the graph we want to talk about. Guys, e-commerce has grown 30% year over year. I grew 50%. I did $5 million last year, that kind of thing. What we don't want to talk about, because it's a little bit more awkward, it's a little bit more exposing, right? We feel naked. Is talking about, do we actually make money? Does our strategy, including the bodies and the technology and the warehouses required to push the products to market, is that strategy actually paying off? And if it is, oh man, it's time to double down, triple down, because there are tools out here like 8fig that can help us to do that. If it isn't, let's be honest enough to fix the challenge of the business model first, because capital scales our financial model. It doesn't fix our financial model. If our financial model sucks, adding $1 million of cash to the business is going to make it suck with a huge blazing fire of cash being burned. If our business model is great, then adding cash to it can get us, Brandon, I'm imagining this meeting with you and your wife where it's like, okay, I had a $15 million upper limit challenge for my thought process. I talked to a great coach and I get to a $25 million. Now there's my limit on my way to 100 million.
I think understanding the data is so important. I was on a call yesterday, and it was a woman who has a brand. She sells about 150,000 a month. Hasn't grown much in the last year, and she's with another agency. And I got on a call with her, and the first thing I'm trying to figure out is, like, she's expecting something, and if I take her on as a customer, she's going to expect that from me, and I want to diagnose the problem, right? Because I want to understand why she hasn't grown in the last year. And one of the things, like, live, during the call with her, is I'm looking at her main keywords, like 2-3 main keywords, and the search volume is dramatically down over the last year on those keywords. And she's saying, hey, she's blaming the other agency on why she's not growing. But if I take that customer, that's going to be me in a month, right? And in fact, it should be the data and the search volume. I mean, I want to understand that, but people are like, my sales are down year over year, but okay, take a look at the data, take a look at the search volume of the keywords. Also, you have to recognize the macro effects. I saw a great thread on Twitter of somebody saying a lot of people are going to be down this March and April over last year because the government last year was putting out a ton of stimulus money, during this time, and people were spending that money and buying products, and that's not happening right now, right? So understanding the data and actually what's happening and diagnosing what are the issues in your business, and then at the same time, she hasn't launched new products, right? So search volume is down on those keywords. The business is kind of stagnant, and you're not looking at the right things. It's very easy to just say, hey, I handed this, like, kind of like Brandon said, you just hire people, like, I handed this off to an agency. They're not doing a good job. It's not my issue or my understanding of what's actually happening in the market. It's this other problem. And I actually don't want to take it on unless myself and the customer are understanding what is the actual problem. Maybe her agency is doing fine, and it's not anything to do with their performance. There was a good question in the chat asking, what are the 3 main things, areas a seller should focus on to guarantee profitable growth? I don't know if you can guarantee anything, but maybe Brandon or
Yeah,
Tyler,
and just
chime
to
in.
tag onto that, Liran, each of you guys have named data that you look at. I think let's really bring that forward so it's crystal clear to everyone who's listening. What is the data that you're looking at every day to be successful?
I mean, I have to, and then I want to ask Brandon what you're doing because I think your insights would be great. But for me, understanding what my landed cost of goods sold plus my marketing budget. So those are kind of separate on your profit and loss statement. But if I could understand COGS, and what I mean by that is my factory invoice plus duties, tariffs, freight, that kind of thing, plus what I'm having to spend in actual tacos, not ACOS, but tacos to move the product. If that number is less than 50%, you're okay. If the number's less than, if it's more than 50%, you're in trouble. If it's less than 45%, you have a product that can scale. And if it's at 40% or better, you have an 8-figure product and you really have the ability to meet your customer needs. It means you're highly differentiated. I'm curious, Brandon, how do you guys manage profitability of your products?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have trouble calculating their true landed costs, like their cost of goods, and that's
It's
one of the
different
biggest
every,
issues.
different on every order, right? Like it makes it e-commerce is tricky.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons that we with Data Dive we released the free profits tool, and we take into account literally everything we could think of with regards to the costs involved with landing the product. So if you're bouncing it off of a 3PL, you don't think that they're going to charge you to take it off the container and palletize it and charge you for the pallets and then charge you to store it and then charge you to wrap it and then charge you to label it and then charge you to ship it back, and then you have to pay for the shipping back to Amazon. So you have to consider all the costs involved, no matter how you're shipping it and to where you're shipping it and how you're shipping it. So true landed costs are difficult for people to calculate, and I'm sure Tyler sees it all the time where they're like, well, I bought it for $4 at the factory and I'm selling it for 12, I must be making money. And the reality is they're landing it for 9 and they're losing money every time it sells.
And they're getting 20% refunds, so they've lost money before they even like sell a unit.
And if you're seeing
but that exactly what you guys are describing is how 8Fig was built, right? To bring all of that to the front, front and center. Here's what it actually costs to get your product sold. So it's not just the cost to your manufacturer. Your supply chain is composed of so many more steps, right? Freight, which went AWire last year. And we've got, the cost of logistics, palletizing, et cetera, quality assurance, whatever that means for your store. Marketing, all of those things go into your landed cost, your actual cost per unit, cost of goods. And that needs to make sense exactly like you were saying for your scale. So you're looking at that data and you have it in a very visual dashboard, like the one that we've created on 8Fig. That is going to help you make those decisions on the fly, because something sooner or later is going to happen to your supply chain, something that you didn't expect, something that you didn't plan for necessarily. And when that happens, obviously, it's going to get stressful, but you want to have at least that visibility of, all right, what can I change now? What can I move around in order to guarantee, first of all, that this supply chain line is profitable and that it doesn't damage my future orders. I don't want to get into a surplus situation. I don't want to get into a stock out. What do I need to now shift?
Yeah. So we saw last year, there were a couple of things on this topic that are super important, I think, for people to think about. We saw last year a huge margin compression. Tyler was talking about how, people think they're making money and they're not, but we understand our numbers pretty well. And during Q2 last year, we had a couple months where we had single-digit margins, and we were operating, at a high scale. But we looked at the situation and we said, okay, well, we have these products and our competition hasn't raised their prices. As a matter of fact, a lot of them have even lowered it, even though it was more to get it there. And we were like, well, what is their incentive? Luckily, we knew some of the same factories, and we asked the sales reps, what are they doing? Are they reordering? And the answer was no, they had given up on the product they were liquidating. So we had to make a decision. Do we keep our price low and compete on price, even though we know they're liquidating because they have a lot of units, and eat the margin loss there and, break even almost like on a few products? or do we like kind of raise our price and wait it out and sacrifice potentially some keyword ranks, some organic ranks, and some issues there? And so we made the decision to stick it out because we knew that come Q4, we were going to be able to raise our prices significantly and that margin would be there. But we had to have that long-term thinking and that long-term approach. So margin compression is something that happens. And when people are like, what do I have to do to get the 30% margin? I tell you what, at our scale with 30 employees, we don't operate at 30% margin. We're like 17% net margin. And the larger you get, a lot of times that happens because you have a lot more overhead and a lot more moving parts. But that's what it takes to scale. So that's another consideration too, when you're going to get to that point where you're at 1 to 3 million and everything is awesome because it's you and a VA and you don't have a warehouse or any overhead. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, to get to that next level, I might need to start spending a lot more. My margin's going to go down because of all these other operating expenses. Is it worth it? Do I want to do that and learn how to do that and take it on and take on that risk? Or should I just exit, right?
Yeah. I think in kind of answering the question Liran brought forward, you guys have brought forward some really huge points. Like you got to get that overhead view and then you've got to do a deep dive. You can't do one and not the other. And so I think that some of the data and the opportunities, and I know there's some amazing tools out there like Data Dive from Brandon Young. And all these guys have offered audits, by the way, as part of like our giveaways today. And so take advantage of some of those giveaway opportunities. I think dig deep. Like that's one of our big encouragements is like get a plan in front of you. Be aggressive in that plan to the demand. Don't just plan to the cash that you have. And then also like really dive deep, understand, like Donna mentioned our lines lab, it helps you kind of look at the cost for every batch of inventory across every stage of the supply chain across 12 to 15 months. Like you should be looking out that far, but then you also need to look at the batch level. So I think that's some of the main encouragements that are coming forward. One of the questions I don't want to not ask, because we have some awesome experts in the room, is how do you make sure that your cash flow matches the opportunity in front of you? And what happens when things go sideways? Everybody had a sideways experience this year. I really don't think anybody missed one. Some people still came out incredible. Some people came out just like, hey, I held my ground. Others made major pivots. But that's a critical thing as we're looking at 2022.
I think that one of the biggest things for us was at scale because of having 150 at the time, maybe in Q2, Q3, we had like 150 plus SKUs. Now we're up over 200. But once you diversify and you have enough SKUs, if something happens to one, we had one of our best sellers go down because of an inspection complaint, or like they were looking for some kind of certificate that we had. We had a complaint from someone, like maybe a competitor, and we still couldn't get it back. And it was something that we were making a lot of money on. But I would say that as you scale, you're going to also help diversify, and you should never have all your eggs in one basket. And I think that I see that a lot. I see a lot of people hit a home run and then they get complacent. And it's like Liran's potential client that he was talking to, where he was, she was comfortable making her $150,000 a month. Well, if she's been doing that for the last year, why didn't she launch at least 10 more products, right? Like, what are you doing not scaling your business? Stagnation is death. Like if you're going to remain stagnant, your business is going to die. And you're going to have competitors come in, you're going to have keywords switch on you that you didn't know. You're indexed and ranking well for keywords that are getting a lot of search volume, but then Amazon changes the auto pre-fill and all of a sudden it went from 20,000 to 2,000 and something else is getting 20,000 that you're not ranked for, right? But how do you even identify that? You need to do the proper keyword research and constantly be growing and scaling. So
I think the one thing to be prepared for is, especially, in selling on Amazon, is being prepared for challenges and change, right? Amazon is constantly changing. We saw last year changes to how you can rank your products. Like we consistently see change. And one thing you can bet on is that, if you're coasting now, you may not be coasting later because something will happen. Amazon will take a product down, or you're going to get a
change the terms of service.
Yeah.
Like
change the service. Yeah.
Yeah. To Erica's question about like what happens when you don't have enough to scale, like if something happens, you end up getting hurt. that's where something that I think that it was kind of a T-balled question, because like 8-fig is the answer, right? Like
Sorry,
legitimate.
guys. T-ball.
Yeah. You teed that one up for us, but legitimately, like, we've borrowed capital. We've been doing this for over 6 years with private label. When cabbage was a thing, we borrowed money, and we've taken out so many Amazon loans, right? Like, they're offering us $1 million now to, like, they want us to take their money, but the borrowing capital has never been the way it is with you guys. And I legitimately say that. I mean, I understand that this is a webinar to really help the people listening, but I really want to make the point that when you're borrowing money from a lender, a hard money lender, and every 2 weeks they're taking money out, or every week, your APR is astronomical. And it's not the same as having a partner that's vested in your interest, like vested in helping you with your business, the way that 8-fig has taken the approach of really partnering with you, which is helping you with your planning, education, understanding the entire process of driving a product from launch and everything that you guys do with cash flow. It's phenomenal. So yeah, borrow.
Well, and I know I
borrow
did
from
T-ball
8-fig.
that. I did T-ball that, but I also do want to acknowledge that it's scary. Like, taking capital is risky, and it has been traditionally very risky. And so I do think when you're thinking about, do I have enough cash? It's like, there's a lot of fear in taking on any more risk or any more responsibility.
But even if you take the inherent risk that there is with cash flow, it's scary. And I'm sure that Tyler can speak to this, right? People don't necessarily know how to plan cash flow. They don't know how to plan for that gap, that we call it the cash flow crunch, right? But it's basically the gap between having to pay for inventory and seeing revenue from that inventory. That can really stifle companies from growing, even though they have the demand is there. Theoretically, the revenue would cover bigger orders. You could be scaling, but cash flow is constantly keeping you down. So how do you ensure that A, you have visibility onto it, and B, that it just becomes not part of the equation anymore? Or, as I said before, money becomes not something that you necessarily have to consider, or not, the first thing that you have to consider, like it has been up to now when you're planning to scale.
Well, like, as a CFO, I think money is something I always consider, but I understand your point. The point is, you plan when things are good for the black swan event that will happen, right? I mean, 2 years ago, none of us in this room could have said that container costs were going to crest 25,000 a container.
No one can.
But what we probably should have been able to say, and it's funny, Liran, you and I were on some shows 2 years ago, we probably did say this: something's going to happen. Something is going to happen that's going to make you happy that you have a clear plan and that your strategy and your capital strategy align. So what is my product? So for me, there's 3 parts of the funnel. I've got a sourcing funnel, I've got a sales funnel, and I've got a capital funnel. And the key in my business, as the CEO of my business, is to make sure that all 3 of those funnels are pointing in the right direction. And yes, it's scary to take on capital. It's even scarier to not have any capital when your business is tumultuous. And so I would say, of the CFO clients that we coach, most of them that are healthy have capital, and most of them that are struggling don't have capital. Like, that's kind of like the simple anecdote. It's like,
Definitely.
So plan ahead. If you're going to raise cash, whether it's 8-fig or another partner, do the math to make sure that it's a good investment decision. Do that math in advance.
8-fig won't loan you money unless it is a good investment decision.
That's very true.
Fair enough.
We should probably.
Actually, yeah, if you want $1 million and it doesn't, no, of course. So 8-fig is only good at their job if they can underwrite the deal, but don't make, Dawn and her team underwrite it for you. Know your deal, know what your numbers are, so that you can make a good choice, and then get the money before it's an emergency. Now, if it is an emergency, there are other options that are out there. But I would say this: it's like, if you're a brand owner and you're not spending 10% of your time, kind of split in 2 different ways. 10% of my time cultivating my supply chain. Oh, darn, I don't want to do that. When the world opens back up, I don't want to fly to China. Go to China anyway. The guys that I've had in my
great
portfolio,
time. Right now is a great time, by the way.
Go now. Liran says go now. Go now. Buy a plane ticket.
Liran's leading the trip.
Bring some suitcases, bring some goods with you to save on freight.
That's
Wish I
right.
could do it.
Like drink sake, bring Rolexes, do the whole 9 yards.
One
because
suitcase
if
is
you
like
invest that,
$5,000.
Exactly.
Oh my
Great.
God.
well worth it. If 10% of your time is not split between cultivating your supply chain and cultivating your capital chain, how many bankers have I met through? Have I met with Donna's team? Do I understand what my options are here in 8Fig and the other
Yep.
options that are out there? Then shame on you, because like that's 10% of your time. In a normal week, that might be 4 to 5 hours of your life. Cultivate those other, you love marketing. We all love marketing, but spend a little bit of your energy on the other funnels, because that's what's going to maybe make us more successful.
I would say personally, one of the early mistakes I made is not taking the business, like it was a side hustle for me, Amazon too, and not taking it seriously from the beginning, because I would have gone further ahead, and not knowing my numbers as well from the beginning. I think one of the best investments you can make is hiring some pros, and like Tyler, and getting an LLC, and getting your business set up correctly, and knowing your numbers from the get-go. Because if you're more of a creative, marketing focus and not
Yeah.
operational in the numbers, it's really, really going to hurt you. And one of the things I see in my agency is that our best clients, they have their data, they have their Excel spreadsheets, they know their business to the T, or have somebody in their business that knows the macro numbers of how the business is doing overall, and then each and every product. What is my sessions? What are my conversions? What are the keywords that I'm ranking for? What are the changes that are happening on a weekly basis that I need to look at, that are alerts for me to, identify in the business? And if you that's the way you should be setting yourself up to have success. And, I will leave, one thing with like people that I've seen. So Leon is asking, can you recommend someone or an agency for CFO or just bookkeeping? So Tyler is also a partial CFO, so seller accountant. Leon, highly recommended, by the way. I think one of the things, as far as like the mindset for sellers that are succeeding, one of my mentors, Jesse Itzler, says, I didn't come this far to only come this far, right? Like Brandon's $15 million story, right? Like, and his coach, like, why are you doing this? If that's kind of what you're settling for, and having that kind of mindset in the business, knowing you're gonna have challenges and overcoming them, is the recipe for success.
You guys have nailed so many critical things, I think, to helping people truly plan aggressively and understand the risks and scale with those in mind, not turning a blind eye. I think some of the really important things that have come up are do your work, like do the work, take this seriously. You guys are going to learn so much if you actually look at the numbers. One thing that we've alluded to, but we haven't said really clearly, that we believe wholeheartedly and has come up a little bit in the themes, is that you need to be prepared to pivot and adapt constantly. If you're going to plan aggressively, you need to look at the data to validate that plan, and then you need to be prepared to constantly pivot. Do you guys have any final comments on that last point? I know we wanted to be sure to share that because we think that's a critical part of kind of mitigating risk. But
I think you need to remove emotion out of that, because I think what sellers get into is like, you fall in love with a product. And
yeah,
I think in my business, one of the things I'll do is like, I'll set a deadline, and I'm like, if the numbers on this particular product or thing are by the end of the next quarter are not where they need to be, I'm just cutting it, right? And you need to put on your investor hat, or have somebody like that in your corner and look at the data and guide you, and not have that emotional
that's so
attachment.
huge.
I see it a lot in my agency, like, but last year we did X with this product. Yeah, but last year everybody was buying arts and crafts, and it's different time now. So don't attach to those numbers.
That's a great lesson, Liran. We've lost a lot of money throwing good money after bad products because of arrogance, and because of saying, I can, this time it'll be different. I'll launch this product differently this time, recalling it, relabeling it, sending it back in again and again. And I would have made a lot more money just lighting it on fire.
Right.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, and I know one of the reasons we built 8Fig the way we did is so that you can pivot. If there's a line that is not working for you at this point, you should be able to cancel that line and still be able to fully fund your other product offerings. So in 8Fig, we've made that a possibility to where if you need to kill something, you can kill it, but it doesn't mean you're killing your whole business. You're still investing in those other lines and those other batches, but you're calling a spade. You're kind of looking things square in the face, but you're holding on to your aggressive strategy and your plan. So I want to leave just a few minutes to get a few questions on the table. So we hit up what a question on the table, which was what are the areas sellers should focus on to guarantee profitable growth. Thanks for answers on that. We do have a question about launching products. Should we still use search and buy? So Liran, Brandon, does anybody have any thoughts that you want to throw out? I know that is a webinar in itself, so I probably should refer you to a master class at that point, but
definitely not. So running outside ads, working with influencers are completely fine and for terms of service. And I recommend doing that in a more traditional way. Driving people to mimic searches are explicitly against the rules now. So search, find, buy is against the rules. And don't manipulate any of the links that you're using from Google or from any other outside platform, because Amazon can detect that. And at any given time, they'll just drop the hammer. They're just tracking it. You're going to be put in a folder with cheaters. And then at some point, they're just going to start banning them 100 at a time like they did last year. And they banned over 200,000 accounts and over 3.5 billion in revenue was gone from the sellers that were removed from the platform last year. So, and that vacuum is good for us, right? So don't cheat, do it the right way.
It's awesome. Liran, any thoughts you want to add on launch strategy in 2022? What should you be thinking about?
I mean, I think 2022 is the year that Amazon sellers need to think more like brands and take those steps to not just focus on the platform itself, but also focus on things outside to bring in traffic, and Amazon's going to reward you for it. So things, same thing Brandon said, Google traffic, influencer traffic, building a following off Amazon. I think it's okay to send all that traffic into Amazon or your Shopify, but think more like a brand, develop creative like a brand, launch products that are not the same me too as everybody else is, and you'll have a much greater chance of success.
Don, I know one person asked, how quickly can I engage 8fig about continuous capital? So I'll let you answer that one.
Do you have internet? Then it's about 20 minutes.
While I'm pulling our giveaway list, do you mind telling people how to set up a growth plan like in less than 30 seconds?
So you sign up on our website. Eric is going to drop the link over here, and then it's going to run through a couple of questions just to understand a little bit more about your business. But then very quickly, you're going to be taken to our line lab, which is where you build your supply chain lines. Essentially, you're telling us about your supply chain for your hero product or whatever products you're trying to finance with 8fig. There are all kinds of automations within the product that are going to help you go from one line to a full year of planning, or just duplicating your supply chain, just so that you can run through it a little quicker and then do whatever tweaks you need. But then once you're ready, connect your store and submit, and then we should get back to you in a little while.
Awesome. Well, yeah. I want to thank you guys. You've offered such incredible content in here. And I hope you guys are leaving with some really strong encouragements to think big this year, but also think deeply, look at the data, make smart decisions, pull in amazing experts to support you. Stay adaptable as you go, make changes constantly. Don't get attached to the wrong things. So many awesome things in here. I am going to pull up a few slides just as I close to let you know about a few things coming up. This series is continuing. You want to definitely be there for our next webinar. This is exactly 2 weeks from now. You can register inside the chat. We're talking about product innovation and sourcing. I also want to mention that when you're thinking about product innovation and sourcing, Brandon's data dive tool is amazing. So that's another resource that you should dig into. There. And then I also want to talk about giveaways. We got a few giveaways to name as we close out here. These guys have been awesome to offer some of their amazing resources: Inner Circle membership, masterclass, financial deep dive consultation from Tyler, and then a PPC Amazon audit. So Arthur Robinson, if you're still in here, you have won the Inner Circle membership. Congrats.
Wow.
Wow, congrats.
I mean, amazing. Levi Parker, you won the PPC. the PPC Masterclass, Shahid Iqbal, Finance Deep Dive, and Kelsey Harding, the Amazon Advertising Audit. Really grateful for everybody who joined today. And again, thank you so much to our panelists. We couldn't tell you how much we appreciate it. And
Erica,
yeah, Liran, go for it.
how do people follow up on their winnings?
Oh yeah, we'll reach out to you. You gave us your email, so we have your contact information. And then for those of you who joined us on stream, we have some opportunities. We'll tag you in Facebook to do a few giveaways as well. And because these guys have been so generous, we have a few surprise giveaways that we'll be pulling also.
Erica, can you share a little bit about the following webinar after the next one? Who's going to be on?
The
third one, the marketing one?
Oh, okay. So after we have product innovation and sourcing, we've got freight and logistics. And after that, we've got marketing. That's actually the fourth one. And that will be, we've got some amazing folks, Casey Goss, Norm Farrar on that one. So, and also obviously Liran Hirschkorn. So we're really thrilled to have you guys follow along with us. All righty. Wish you guys an amazing day. Stay connected. And follow our amazing panelists, Liran Hirschkorn, Brandon Young, Tyler Jefcoat, and Donna Oren. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
See
Erica.
everybody.